The scream echoed across the vast fields of Lane Ranch in Kentucky, cutting through the crisp autumn air like a blade. The pristine white stallion, Savannah Lane's pride and joy, a champion racehorse worth over $500,000, collapsed onto the wet earth with a thud that shook the ground. Blood seeped from a deep gash on its flank, staining its glossy coat crimson. The horse's breaths came in ragged gasps, its wide eyes filled with panic as it thrashed weakly. Workers froze in place tools dropping from their hands. No one dared approach. This wasn't just any horse, it was Eclipse, the one that had won the National Derby 2 years ago, a symbol of the Lane family's legacy. Touching it meant risking everything. Liability, blame, the wrath of the young heiress who owned the sprawling estate. Savannah Lane, the 28-year-old millionaire who had inherited the ranch after her parents' tragic accident, dropped to her knees beside the animal. Her designer jeans soaked in the mud, but she didn't care. "Eclipse, hold on," she whispered, her voice breaking as she stroked its mane. Tears mixed with the dirt on her face. "Someone! Call the vet now!" she shouted to the stunned staff, her hands trembling as she pressed futilely against the wound. Blood oozed between her fingers, warm and unrelenting. The vet was over 40 minutes away, stuck in traffic on the rural highway. 40 minutes that felt like an eternity as the horse's breathing grew shallower. "Please don't leave me alone," Savannah murmured to Eclipse, her words choked with fear. This horse wasn't just an asset. It was the last living link to her father who had trained it from a foal. Losing it would be like losing him all over again. The workers exchanged uneasy glances. "We can't touch it, Miss Lane," one muttered. "If something goes wrong—" No one wanted the responsibility. The air hung heavy with indecision, the only sounds the horse's labored breaths and the distant rumble of thunder. Then, from the shadows at the far end of the stables, a man emerged. He was dressed in a worn flannel jacket caked with mud, his boots scuffed from a day's labor. Noah Carter, the new temporary worker who'd shown up that morning looking for any job to pay the bills, strode forward without hesitation. He knelt beside the horse, his calloused hands gently assessing the wound. Savannah's head snapped up, her eyes blazing with desperation and anger. "Who are you? Get away from him!" she demanded, her voice sharp as a whip. Noah didn't flinch. He met her gaze steadily, his dark eyes calm amid the chaos. "I'm Noah Carter, the new hand. Let me help." You're just a day laborer. Do you even know what this horse is worth?" Savannah's words tumbled out, laced with fear. $500,000, if you make it worse." "I know," Noah replied evenly, already tearing a strip from his own shirt. "But if we wait those 40 minutes, it'll be too late. He's bleeding out. Please step back." He pressed the fabric firmly against the gash, applying steady pressure. Blood soaked through immediately, but he didn't pull away. The ranch hands watched in stunned silence as the horse shuddered under Noah's touch, its thrashing slowing. Savannah hovered nearby, her fists clenched. "If he dies, because of you, you'll regret this," she whispered, her voice trembling with barely contained panic. Noah glanced up, his expression unchanging. "I've lost plenty in my life already, Miss Lane, but I won't let him die without trying. Trust me, I know what I'm doing." The air thickened with tension as the minutes ticked by. The horse's eyes fluttered, its body going still under Noah's hands. Had he saved it or sealed its fate? No one knew that this poor stranger scraping by to support his young daughter was the son of a renowned horse trainer who'd once worked at this very ranch until a misunderstanding years ago had driven his family away in disgrace. Would Eclipse survive? And why did this unassuming man seem to understand the animal's pain so deeply? Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. 40 minutes crawled by like an eternity on the Lane Ranch. The workers milled about anxiously, casting furtive glances at the stable where Eclipse lay bandaged under Noah's makeshift compress. Savannah paced nearby, her phone clutched in her hand, checking the time every few seconds. When the vet's truck finally pulled up in a cloud of dust, she rushed forward, her face pale and streaked with dried mud. "Doctor!" Harlan, a grizzled man in his 50s who'd tended to the Lane horses for decades, jumped out and hurried to the stallion. He examined the wound quickly, his brow furrowing as he peeled back the blood-soaked shirt fabric. Deep laceration, but the pressure stopped "The major bleeding," he muttered, probing gently. Eclipse whinnied softly, its flanks heaving less erratically now. Harlan stood wiping his hands on a rag. If you hadn't acted fast, Miss Lane, he'd be gone by now. Another 10 minutes and shock would have set in. Savannah exhaled a shaky breath, her eyes darting to Noah, who stood a few paces away, rinsing his blood-stained hands under a spigot near the barn. His torn shirt hung open, revealing a simple white undershirt beneath now speckled with red. She approached him slowly, her boots crunching on the gravel. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Noah Carter," he replied, shaking water from his hands. He didn't look up immediately, focusing instead on scrubbing the dirt from his nails. "Have you studied veterinary medicine?" Savannah pressed, crossing her arms as if to shield herself from the vulnerability of gratitude. Noah shook his head, finally meeting her gaze. "No, ma'am. But my father was a horse trainer. I grew up in stables like this, learning how to read an animal's pain, how to stop a bleed before it takes hold." The name Carter tugged at a distant memory in Savannah's mind. She paused, her expression shifting from relief to faint recognition. Flashbacks flickered. She was a teenager, eavesdropping on heated arguments in her father's office. "Carter's negligence cost us that race and nearly the horse's life," her father had bellowed to his advisors. The man in question, Elijah Carter, had been dismissed, quietly vanishing from the ranch amid whispers of a lawsuit that never materialized. Savannah had been too young to grasp the details, but the bitterness in her father's voice had lingered. "Carter," she murmured, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I remember that name. Your father worked here once, didn't he?" Noah's jaw tightened for a split second, but he nodded calmly. "Yes, he did. But that's old history. I don't want to dig it up. I'm just here to work." Savannah studied him, unsure whether to probe further. For now, the crisis had passed and exhaustion weighed on her. She gave a curt nod and turned away, but the seed of curiosity and perhaps unease had been planted. In the days that followed, Noah threw himself into his duties with quiet efficiency. He arrived before dawn, mucking stalls and grooming the other horses without complaint. He didn't boast about saving Eclipse. Instead, he checked the stallion's wound, daily changing bandages with a gentle precision that spoke of years of unspoken experience. The ranch hands noticed how the animals responded to him, calming under his touch as if he spoke a language only they understood. He paused when a young filly shied away, placing a steady hand on her forehead until her ears relaxed. "Easy there," he'd murmur softly. "No one's going to hurt you." Savannah observed from afar, often from the window of her office in the main house. She saw him eat his lunch alone, a simple sandwich of dry bread and cheese sitting on a bale of hay, never venturing into the staff quarters or the grand kitchen. His solitude intrigued her. He seemed content in his isolation, yet there was a depth to his movements, a purpose that went beyond mere labor. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the rolling hills, Savannah carried 2 steaming mugs of coffee out to the stables. She found Noah inspecting Eclipse's leg, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Here," she said, setting one mug down beside him on a wooden crate. "I don't usually thank people like this, but you saved him." Noah straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans before accepting the mug. Surprise flickered in his eyes. "Thank you, Miss Lane. I wasn't expecting this." "Why did you come back to a place like this?" Savannah asked, leaning against the stall door, her tone less guarded than before. "After what happened to your father, most people would stay away." Noah took a sip, staring out at the fields where the other horses grazed. "I need the work for my daughter, and I love horses even if the past hurts. Running from it doesn't change anything." Savannah's curiosity deepened. "I never thought someone like you could handle something like that so calmly, saving everything without a second thought." He shrugged modestly. "Life teaches you. You learn to act when others hesitate." That evening, as Savannah reviewed ranch accounts in her study, she overheard Noah on his phone outside. His voice softened, carrying through the open window. "Hey, Lilybug. Yeah, Daddy's at a place with the most beautiful horses you've ever seen. When I save up enough, I'll bring you here to see them. I promise. Sleep tight, okay? I love you more than the stars." The words hit Savannah like a quiet wave. She didn't know he had a daughter. Picturing him counting every penny for a child's dream made her see him differently, not just a worker, but a man carrying his own burdens. The next morning, Noah found a pair of new leather gloves in his locker, simple but well made, with a note tucked inside. Hands that save lives shouldn't get hurt. He glanced toward the main house, suspecting the source. From her window, Savannah watched as their eyes met across the distance. Neither looked away first. Noah murmured to himself, though she couldn't hear, "Thank you, whoever's given me a second chance." The gap between them narrowed, bridged by small acts of kindness and unspoken understanding, planting seeds of trust in the fertile soil of the ranch. A week after Eclipse's initial injury, the peace on Lane Ranch shattered again. The stallion, who had been recovering steadily under Noah's watchful care, suddenly faltered during a light trot in the paddock. Its temperature spiked, sweat beading on its coat despite the cool evening air. By nightfall, Eclipse was back in the stable, lying listless, its breaths coming in shallow bursts. Dr. Harlan arrived promptly this time, his face grim as he checked the vital signs. No infection in the wound, but the stress from the fall is catching up. If complications set in, fever turning septic, we could lose him, he warned, packing his bag. Keep him calm. Monitor every hour. Savannah felt her world tilt. She sank onto the straw-covered floor beside the horse, her hand resting on its flank. "Not you too," she whispered, her voice cracking. Memories flooded her. Her father presenting the foal to her on her 10th birthday. His eyes twinkling as he said, "This one's yours, Savvy. He'll carry you through anything." But he had in her parents' car accident, had stolen them away 5 years later, leaving her alone to manage the empire they'd built. Eclipse was all that remained of those happier days. "Please don't leave me," she pleaded softly, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. "I've lost enough." The staff hovered at the stable door, murmuring uncertainties, but no one entered. Then Noah appeared, his silhouette framed by the dim lantern light. He knelt beside the horse, without a word, placing a hand on its neck to feel the pulse. "It's not the wound," he said after a moment, his voice steady. "He's panicking, reliving the fall. Animals remember trauma like we do." Savannah looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "How can you be so sure if you're wrong?" "I'm not," Noah interrupted, gently adjusting a blanket over the stallion. "Savannah, don't be afraid. He can feel your fear. Breathe steady for him." "How can I not be afraid?" she snapped, her voice rising with desperation. "I've lost everything already, my parents, my family. This horse is all I have left of them if he dies because of some mistake." At that moment, the old ranch manager, Mr. Wilkins, stepped into the light, his weathered face hardening as he eyed Noah. "Carter's boy, huh? Back here pretending to play hero. Your father cost us a champion, once nearly bankrupted the place with that accident. What are you really after now?" The words hung heavy in the air. Savannah's head whipped toward Noah, shock etching her features. "What Noah? Your father? He was the one who lost a horse here. Why didn't you tell me?" Noah stood slowly, wiping his hands on his jeans, his expression pained but composed. "Because it wasn't his fault. There was an accident during a race, a loose saddle girth no one caught. They blamed him to avoid a bigger scandal. He left quietly to spare the ranch a lawsuit. I didn't want you thinking I came back for revenge or pity. I'm just a poor man trying to make ends meet." Savannah rose unsteadily, her fists clenched. "You hid this from me. How do I know you're not wrong now? I control millions. Noah, I can fire anyone, buy anything, but I can't save him if you're mistaken. If he dies, it'll be like losing my parents all over again." Noah's eyes softened with understanding, but a flicker of hurt crossed his face. "I get it. You see me as just the hired help, the poor guy who might mess up your world. If you don't trust me, I'll go right now. But Savannah, I've lost two. My wife to illness 3 years ago. Left me with Lily to raise alone. I know what it's like to fear everything slipping away." The stable fell silent, save for Eclipse's uneven breaths. Savannah turned away, her shoulders shaking. "Just fix him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please." Noah knelt back down, his hand steady on the horse's forehead. He leaned close, whispering softly, "Easy now. Calm down. No one's abandoning you. I'm right here." The words seemed to echo beyond the animal, hanging in the air like a bomb. Savannah glanced back, her tears fresh. You're not talking to him, are you? You're talking to me. Noah looked up, his gaze meeting hers with raw honesty. Maybe both. I live in fear every day, fear I won't make enough for Lily's school, fear the past will haunt me forever, fear being judged because I'm broke. But I don't fear caring for something, even if it might break my heart. That's what makes life worth it. As the night wore on, Eclipse's fever began to break the horse's breathing evening out under Noah's vigil. Dawn crept in through the stable windows, casting a soft glow. Savannah, exhausted, slumped against the wall. Noah draped his jacket over her shoulders. You don't have to be strong all alone, he said quietly. She pulled it closer, her voice barely audible. Neither do you. The question lingered unspoken. Could she trust him enough to let go of the past? Would he stay, or would old wounds drive him away? The ranch held its breath, the weight of misunderstanding pressing down like the morning mist. The stallion's fever broke just before dawn, its breathing steadying under Noah's quiet vigilance. Savannah woke, slumped against the stable wall, Noah's jacket still draped over her shoulders like a fragile shield. She blinked at the first rays of sunlight filtering through the slats, then looked at Eclipse, who was now standing on shaky legs nosing at a bucket of water. Relief flooded her, but it was tempered by exhaustion and the raw ache of vulnerability she'd exposed the night before. Noah was rinsing his hands at the spigot outside his torn shirt, still stained with dried blood. He glanced up as she approached, his expression calm but watchful. You were right, she said quietly, stopping a few feet away. It was panic, not infection. I should have trusted you. Noah dried his hands on his jeans. You were scared. That's human. I've been there watching something you love slip away and feeling powerless. When my wife got sick, I wanted to fix everything. But some things you just have to sit with. Savannah's throat tightened. She looked toward the fields where the other horses grazed peacefully. I lost my parents in a car accident 5 years ago. Eclipse was the last gift my father ever gave me. Losing him would have been like losing them all over again. Noah stepped closer, his voice low and steady. I'm sorry. I know that kind of pain. After Lily's mom died, I thought I'd never feel steady again. But you don't have to carry it alone, not today. She met his eyes, something shifting in her guarded expression. Come inside. I'll make breakfast. I'm terrible at it, but I don't want to eat alone right now. Noah hesitated only a moment before nodding. Lead the way. In the ranch's spacious kitchen, Savannah fumbled with eggs, cracking one too hard so the shell shattered into the bowl. She cursed under her breath, cheeks flushing. Noah moved beside her without a word, gently taking the bowl and fishing out the fragments. You don't have to prove anything here, he said softly. Not strength, not perfection, just be. Savannah watched him crack the next egg perfectly, his hand steady despite the night's ordeal. Why are you always the calm one? Even when I accused you, even when Wilkins brought up your father, you didn't flinch. Noah stirred the eggs in the pan, his voice measured. I've had practice. When my wife died, I wanted to run from everything, the memories, the responsibility. But Lily needed me. So I learned to stay even when it hurt. Even when people looked at me like the poor widower who couldn't keep his family together. He plated the simple scrambled eggs and toast, sliding one toward her. Why did you never tell me about your father sooner? Savannah asked, taking a bite. Because I didn't want you thinking I came back for revenge or pity. I'm just a man trying to build something honest for my daughter. They ate in companionable silence for a moment. Then, Savannah noticed how he'd pushed the slightly larger portion toward her. Why do you always give me the better piece? Like you do for Lily, Noah smiled faintly. Because I know what it feels like to go without. You deserve to be taken care of, Savannah, even if it's just eggs. After breakfast, they stepped outside together. Eclipse was grazing in the near paddock, moving slowly but surely. Savannah smiled a real, unguarded smile. He's going to be okay. Noah stood beside her close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. So are you. She turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for staying when I pushed you away. for not letting my fear win." He met her gaze, his expression softening. "I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you ask me to." In the weeks that followed, the wall between them continued to crumble. Savannah no longer watched him from afar. She joined him in the stables, learning the quiet rhythm of his work. One afternoon, as they brushed Eclipse together, she spoke again of her father. "I'm sorry I doubted you about yours," she said. "I was scared of losing control, of trusting someone who reminded me of the past." Noah paused, his hand resting on the horse's flank. "I forgive you. The past made us who we are, but it doesn't have to own us." Savannah looked at him, her eyes searching. "I used to think I had to be strong alone. But now, with you here, I feel like I can just be." He smiled gently, not reaching for her, but letting the space between them feel warm and safe. "That's all I've ever wanted, for you to feel safe." The ranch began to feel different, lighter. The distance that had once defined them shrank with every shared meal, every quiet conversation, every moment of trust rebuilt. And as Eclipse cantered freely across the fields once more, Savannah and Noah stood side by side, watching the horse they had saved together, and perhaps in doing so, saving something in each other. The storm had passed. What remained was the quiet promise of something new beginning to grow. A few weeks later, the golden hues of Kentucky's late autumn bathed Lane Ranch in a warm glow. Eclipse trotted freely across the paddock, his coat gleaming under the sun, the scar on his flank a faint reminder of the ordeal that had nearly claimed him. Savannah stood by the wooden fence, her arms crossed loosely, watching the horse with a quiet satisfaction she hadn't felt in years. The ranch felt alive again, not just a business but a place of healing. Noah joined her, wiping sweat from his brow after repairing a loose gate. He leaned against the fence beside her, their shoulders brushing lightly. "He's stronger than before," Noah observed, his voice carrying a note of pride. Savannah turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Noah, I've been thinking about what you said about your dream, the school for kids like Lily, teaching them to ride for free. I want to make it happen here on the ranch, for the children in the nearby towns who could never afford it." Noah's eyes widened, surprise etching his features. "You're serious, Savannah? That won't bring in profit. It could cost you time, resources." She smiled faintly, her gaze drifting back to Eclipse. "I've built enough to make money. Empires, deals, expansions, but lately I've realized I want to build something with meaning. Like you said that night, something worth the risk, even if it might hurt." He studied her for a moment, his voice softening. "Why now, after everything?" "Because you've shown me it's possible," she replied honestly. "To care, without holding too tight. I have more than enough. Let's use it for something good." Noah nodded slowly, a warmth spreading in his chest. "All right, for the kids, for Lily." That afternoon, Noah brought his daughter to the ranch for the first time. Lily, a bright-eyed 6-year-old with unruly curls and a gap-toothed grin, bounced out of his old truck, her small hand clutching a stuffed horse toy. "Daddy, is this where the magic horses live?" she asked, her voice bubbling with excitement. Noah chuckled, scooping her up. "Something like that, bug. Come meet Miss Savannah and Eclipse." Savannah knelt to Lily's level as they approached the paddock, her usual poise giving way to a genuine smile. "Hi, Lily. Your dad tells me you love horses." Lily nodded vigorously, her eyes wide as she spotted Eclipse grazing nearby. "Can I touch him? Please." "Of course," Savannah said, guiding her gently to the fence. Lily reached out tentatively, her tiny fingers brushing the stallion's muzzle. Eclipse snorted softly, nuzzling her hand, and Lily giggled with delight. "He's so soft, Daddy. He's like my toy, but real." As Lily chattered away, Savannah and Noah stood back watching her. "She's fearless," Savannah murmured. "Just like her mom." Noah replied, a touch of nostalgia in his tone. "But she's got my stubborn streak, too." Lily turned suddenly, her face serious. "Miss Savannah, do you ever get scared? You'll lose him. Like if he runs away." Savannah paused, kneeling again. "I do get scared, sweetie, a lot, but loving something doesn't mean keeping it locked up. It means trusting it enough to let it be free to live." Lily tilted her head, absorbing the words. "Like how Daddy lets me play outside, even if I might fall." Exactly like that, Savannah said, her voice warm. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the fields, Lily ran off to explore a nearby hay bale, her laughter echoing. Noah and Savannah lingered by the fence, the air between them charged with unspoken possibility. I don't know what the future holds, Noah said quietly, turning to her. More storms, maybe. More fears. But I don't want to run from you because I'm afraid. You've given me hope, Savannah. A reason to stay. She reached out her hand, finding his for the first time, fingers intertwining tentatively. Me too. I used to think I had to control everything to keep it safe. But now, I just want to stay long enough to see what grows between us. No promises, no rush. Just being here. They stood like that, watching Lily play the ranch, wrapping around them like a quiet embrace. In time, their lives wove together not through grand gestures, but daily choices. Noah's dream took shape. The free riding classes began drawing children from nearby towns, Lily among the first to saddle up. Savannah found joy in the simplicity, her empire expanding not in wealth, but in purpose. They built a family chosen and cherished, where old wounds healed in the light of new beginnings. Noah moved into a small cottage on the ranch, Lily's room filled with drawings of horses and Miss Savannah. Evenings were shared meals, stories of the past exchanged without bitterness, and quiet walks where hands found each other naturally. In the end, kindness didn't need fanfare to be heroic. It was simply daring to stay when others had walked away, to love without the fear of loss defining it. If this story touched your heart, reminding you that second chances bloom in the quietest moments, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to know that healing is possible. And if you want to see what happens next, how Noah and Savannah's love deepens, or Lily's first big ride, comment Part 2 below. Your thoughts could inspire the continuation.